Good afternoon, anti-novelists, Lilligans, curious onlookers, and friends. Welcome back to this episode of Cat TV. No, I'm kidding. This episode of Zettelkasten for fiction writers, where imagination finds order. So, what I want to jump into today is something I am so excited. I'm so excited to share this with you. So, as writers, oftentimes we set our project goals. You are fully aware, if you've been with me for any amount of time, that I am in a dead heat to finish writing the Zettelkasten for fiction writers book for you to help you get your books written. So that's what I've been focused on. But I cannot tell a lie. More and more lately, especially as we get into the autumn here in the Midwest, things are cooling down, the days are getting shorter, I've got pumpkin pie, all of those things. Number one, this is my favorite time of year. Number two, I'm always, I would argue, the most inspired to write fiction during the autumn into the winter. I don't know why that is, it just is. Let me know in the comments if you're the same way. Something about autumn says hot coffee, writing, and more writing. So that's what I've been doing. The cool thing, well, it's cool, but it's kind of distracting, is that novel that I started working on and was in the middle of the developmental edit, when on July 9th, I suddenly set that novel aside to start writing this book for you. That doesn't mean that the novel stops talking to me. I have these main male and female characters in my head all the time. And they're starting to work out some issues between them. They're starting to work out some story problems. So what do I do when that happens? I go to my note cards. I've always got a pack of note cards with me, and I start capturing those little details, just like I tell you to do. Well, today's episode is going to show you in practice what that looks like. I can only muzzle those characters for so long before they start saying, hey, we're going to start, talking to you in the shower. We're going to wake you up in the middle of the night until you get what we're trying to tell you. So what's been happening all week is I keep getting little bits of story, bits of conversation, ideas for plot points or plot turns. Because remember, the majority of this book is written. It's just in chunks and bits and loosely stitched together. I still need to finish that final edit. So here's where we are. This is why I'm so excited. Sorry. This is the plot box, okay? So it is exactly as you should remember it. We've talked about my plot box many times, and it just breaks a story down into 4 acts, acts 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then using the plot dot system that writing coach Derek Murphy heralded, promoted. I love his system so much because he cast a very wide net for plot prompts and beats and tethered all those into one nicely organized system that gives you those prompts to drive you through the story. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I simply took each of his prompts and put them on a prompt card, and then those went into my plot box. So in the Zettelkasten for Fiction Writers book, I'll go way further into other plotting methods and the pros and cons of each one. But for me, for this story that I'm writing, the 8-point plot system that is generally conflict-driven, Western-style narrative worked for me. So I stuck with it. So here's where I am. Let's look at some cards. This one says, TCS, which is the name of my novel, Chapter 44. Senses at Gretchen, and I make myself a note. The smoke in the parking lot. Smell and taste it. Another note. Cops covered their mouth. So this is a detail that occurred to me as I was thinking through a scene where a shopkeeper has had a fire in her shop, and I want to lean further into that description in order to really bring that chapter to life for the reader. So I jotted those notes down for myself, and I made a note that happens in chapter 44. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to go over to the plot box, of course. I'm going to tab back to number 44, and boom, I'm going to drop that little reminder right into the tab for that chapter. So this is one way that the Zettelkasten can work in conjunction with your plot box. Now, my eagle-eyed viewers may recall I did number my entire plot box. So for example, the first potential thing that could happen in the story, which we call Meet the Hero, is labeled 7001, The Really Bad Day. So in my Zettelkasten, 7001 is this item, this prompt that could happen in the story. So early on in the writing, that just serves as a placeholder. If I have this idea that maybe this card has an idea that it could be something that's a really bad day happening, I'm going to stick that card in there as my placeholder and come back to it when I'm ready to write drafts. Where I'm at now in the process, however, since this book is largely finished, I'm ready to actually start deep diving in chapter by chapter, looking for things I can tighten up, adding in those little more telling or more descriptive details like the smell and the taste of the smoke in the parking lot, etc. and so forth. So I have numbered tab cards 1, which is chapter 1, through 73, chapter 73. So I now have mostly the complete novel. Now, I will tell you the truth. There are a few chapters after 73 that I'm kind of letting those percolate for a bit. I'm not sure if I need to include those. They might be an epilogue, just not really sure. So they don't have tabs. I only have tabs for the number of chapters that I actually have written. So as I go through now, let's look at another one. Here's a bit of dialogue. Can you afford an honest answer? And then the follow-up question, what will you pay? Isn't that spicy? I love that. I love that. So this is another example that's going to go over in my actual Zettelkasten, which is in the 2 boxes behind me, under those dialogue cards. Remember when I introduced you to the pool of dialogue where you just keep those little snippets that might have bearing? This is going to be a critical question that gets asked in the latter part of my story. So I'm not going to file this in the chapters yet because I don't know where it goes. Instead, I'm just going to tuck it in the back because I know I'm going to use it. Now, if that was a random piece of dialogue that I wasn't sure how it was going to get incorporated, it would go over in the Zettelkasten in that section where I keep the pool of dialogue cards. Let's look at one last one. Chad's fear of needles leads him to fail Tara when she needs him. Then I ask myself the question using a little plot model. Either she forgives him or she blames him. Dun, dun, dun. And that question is left unanswered because that's a question I've not figured out yet for the story. So in the same way that I park that dialogue card back here, I'm going to park this card back here because I know it's going to get used. If I didn't know it was going to be used in the story, it would go over in my Zettelkasten, either under Chad's character cards, or it could potentially go back here where I think it might fit in the actual placeholders of the plot box. So that is where I'm going to leave you today. I just wanted you to see in real time the unfolding of some of the cards I've collected that needed to be filed, and I had a little time today, so what the heck. And some cards that I've written out, not entirely sure how they're going to be used, but knowing that they definitely will be incorporated into the story. So I'm just tucking those into the back for review and placement later. So there you have it. Thank you, as always, for joining me for this episode of Zettelkasten for Fiction, where imagination finds order. We have bored Kitty to tears. Actually, we've bored her to sleep because she's clunked out over there, which is what a kitty should be doing. Thank you all. I appreciate you so very much for being with me on this journey. I will continue writing. I will continue editing. Now that these cards are put away, I'm going to slot in a few other things in the chapter tabs that I know they belong in, and then I'm going to put this box away. No more distractions, and I'm going to get back to working on Zettelkasten for fiction writers. So enjoy the rest of your day. I will see all of you tomorrow.